plight is mostly invisible. The slowly warming seawater, slowly rising up through our porous limestone islands, no longer able to support the slowly dying fish. By the time our plight is made visible for all to see, our luck will have run out. We simply want to live.
Welcome, Bahamas. Welcome to the very first episode of Sustainable Shores, a web series developed by the Sustainable Development Goals Unit in the Office of the Prime Minister. My name is Charles Hamilton, a climate change advisor, and it's my pleasure to serve as the moderator for this first episode. We have a vibrant panel who will discuss the topic SDGs, past, present, and future. Introducing this wonderful panel, we have Dr. Nicola Virgil Rule, Executive Director of the Life for Key Foundation. We also have Ms. Kendrika Kemp, Senior Sustainable Development Goals Officer in the Office of the Prime Minister. Ms. Anessa Abdullah, United Nations Country Coordinator for the Bahamas. And Ms. Rochelle Newbold, the Director of the Sustainable Development Goals Unit. We're looking forward to a wonderful discussion, and let's dive right into it. Starting with you, Dr. Virgil Rule, can you please give a brief description of the process which resulted in the establishment of the SDGs and the SDG unit in the Bahamas?
Thank you, Charles. The work on the SDGs really started over a decade ago. We first began in the Office of the Prime Minister to look at the Millennium Development Goals. And then we had the establishment of the Economic Development and Planning Unit, which was charged with the National Development Plan work. And very soon after that, we realized that there was just a close alignment between the work we were doing on our National Development Plan and the Sustainable Development Goals. And so as a team, and Anissa was there, part of that as well, we worked to integrate and to show how the National Development Plan linked to each of the SDGs. We also, by 2017 or 2018, we were preparing for our first National Voluntary Report, NVR, at the United Nations. And so we worked to show in that report how each of the SDGs and where they were in the National Development Plan. So the EDPU went on, and as a successor to that was the Sustainable Development Goals Unit.
Fantastic. And I think it's so important that we've continued to build on that work. Anessa, do you think you can describe your job as the UN country representative flowing from the SDG unit and now into this new space?
Yeah, just to build on that, it was certainly, the SDG unit was certainly the successor to the EDPU because shortly after Nicola's departure, we had the Over the Hill project, and it seemed like that was going to be the focus. Shortly after that, we established the SDG unit. So a lot of the work of the SDG unit to monitor and raise awareness around the SDGs are linked, it fed nicely into this role. Because as you know, the country coordination officer is linked to the resident coordinator's office, which is based in Jamaica. And we oversee the implementation of the MSDCF, the Multi-Country Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, which I know we'll discuss a little later. And so my job, my primary role is to ensure and serve as a local focal point for UN entities, particularly the non-resident UN entities, to ensure that we're able to achieve the objectives in that plan. So it's our roadmap, that MSDCF, and the coordinator role is really to make sure we're realizing the SDGs on the UN side, supporting nations to do that, and in my case, it's the Bahamas.
Okay. I mean, we're hearing this acronym MSDCF. Why don't you explain how the UN country office bridges that gap between the SDG commitments and the MSDCF?
Yeah. So, and just to say, the MSDCF process actually started under Nicola, but it was signed when I assumed this role within a year or so. And what it does, it aligns the UN agencies, funds, and programs. So the collective UN development systems work with national development priorities. And the way we capture that, and we've been working with the SDG unit on this, is through that country implementation plan. So that cooperation framework, there was a lot of consultation at the country level, at the regional level. It's a regional document, but the country implementation plan really localizes it and specifies it to this context. And so we're ensuring that where possible, the UN works very closely with various line ministries and entities. And also we work with the development partners in countries, so the diplomatic missions and other international organizations, to see how we could collaborate to support the country in achieving the SDGs. And it's a UN document, and so this is undergirded by the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, it's interwoven through that, not only in the document itself, but also in the reporting.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, Dr. Virgil Rowe, transitioning from working in government to now working in the philanthropy sector. Mm-hmm. Can you please describe for us why are the SDGs important? And given your current position, mm-hmm. how would you describe the role of the private sector in assisting in achieving the SDG targets?
The private sector is really vital to the achievement of the SDGs in any country. Mm-hmm. It isn't just up to government in terms of the focus on sustainable development. Mm-hmm. If we look at the first set of SDGs around poverty, about health, around education, about equality, we have to look at how the private sector can work to mobilize resources, to innovate and to cause companies to perform better, to grow, to help productivity improve, and thereby employing more people, becoming more strong, and thereby lifting people out of poverty. Mm-hmm. And so with the philanthropic world as well, similarly, we can innovate, we can produce programs and offer programs to the public that help to support and undergird the work that's happening on a variety of areas. In my space, I'm in education, so there are aspects that we can work on in terms of supporting SDG 4 and others as well.
Okay. Well, guess what? Achieving the SDGs is a heavy lift, mm-hmm. and I think, Ms. Kemp, we hear about partnerships between the UN country office with the private sector and philanthropy, and the importance of education. So, as a senior SDG officer, can you please explain the importance of awareness building on the importance of the SDGs?
Yes, awareness building is very important. It's actually an integral part of the SDGs. With anything, you have to create buy-in. Mm-hmm. And in order to create buy-in, people have to actually know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And in terms of education, it is a huge part of the Sustainable Development Goals to educate, mm-hmm. not just from a child's level, mm-hmm. so that all sectors, all facets of society, that they're able to understand, even from a primary school level, what the SDGs are. Mm-hmm. And so as we do that, education is very important, awareness building, public engagement is also very important. And in doing so, we are able to create a level of buy-in so that people can see the vision of the SDGs. They can know what we are doing, how it impacts them on a personal level. Why? Because, a lot of the work are being done in silos. A lot of people don't even know that the work that they're doing contributes to the Sustainable Development Goals. And so awareness building is very important because in doing so, we are able to, reach out to our partners, let them know what you're doing actually matters, what you're doing actually counts towards, meeting our targets for the SDGs.
Mm-hmm. And I think what is so critical is understanding the vision and priorities in advancing the SDGs within the Bahamas. Director Newbold, can you expand a bit more on what are the vision and priorities for the Sustainable Development Goals in the Bahamas, especially as we get closer to 2030?
Well, 2030 is the day of reckoning. It's the day when all countries around the world that have committed to these targets are going to have to show their report card and how their governments have advanced or improve the situations of their nationals in that regard. For the Bahamas, our priorities rest predominantly in ensuring that our people have food security, which would be no poverty and access to good food under the SDGs. But then it's also the matter of education, as Dr. Virgil Rowe would have spoken to, health. Then there's also the ability for good employment, making sure that there are employment opportunities, as well as the issue of justice, dealing with matters of crime, ensuring that that level does not pervade all facets of society, therefore crippling its ability to produce and to be beneficial to everybody. And then there's also the issue of partnerships. It is not a government function only. We're all in this village. People like to use the analogy of the village. We're all in this village, and as part of the village, the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker all have to work together and have to do their part to make the village thrive, as well as we guard and we encourage and educate our young people, because they are the ones who must take or step in terms of leadership into the shoes of those who are presently in the role. So for the Bahamas, you would hear a lot about energy and the energy program that the government is moving forward. We must provide energy, we must provide access to food, we must provide health and education, and therefore that would generate jobs. But the jobs require the partnerships. And in doing that, we'll also address the issue of peace and justice, removing the element of crime, and therefore be a much stronger society. We're an island state, and we need to operate like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think, in addressing the various aspects you brought up, it's clear that the SDGs are designed to leave no one behind. Ms. Kemp, why do you think that slogan, leave no one behind, is reflected in the SDGs throughout the Bahamas?
Well, the slogan of the SDGs, leaving no one behind, it actually helps us to create strategies of implementation, because more times or more often that when we are thinking in terms like holistically, we aren't thinking of our vulnerable groups. We're not thinking of our marginalized groups. Everybody just gets thrown into one bucket, and there are persons that actually that fall by the wayside. And if we actually use that slogan in everything that we do in terms of policy implementation and policy creation, then we will ensure that our vulnerable groups, are not left behind. Like recently, we have been seeing that women are now being pushed more in the forefront of farming. We have gender-specific opportunities for employment for women and girls. Especially with our disabled community, we are seeing now that they are more active in our society now. Not that they weren't active before, it's just that the policies and the policies that we create actually are putting them, making sure that we are, keeping them in the forefront of our minds, that they are not left behind.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think, this is why this web series is so important, because we're trying to explain that the SDGs is not just this nebulous thing that exists, right? These targets, these areas, all of impact on how we will advance as a society. I think, Dr. Virgil Rowe, I want to loop back to you. From the perspective of the foundation, how do you think, or how is the foundation helping to contribute towards SDG 4 and other SDGs? Because I'm hearing that no one can do it by themselves. Government, the UN, private sector need to be all involved.
Well, we really hold ourselves and the SDGs up as part of our guideposts when we're looking at our work. So SDG 4 is an important, obviously SDG 4, the Life of Key Foundations, and we look at all of the elements, all of the targets within the SDG 4. And so, for example, as we're thinking about equality in SDG 4, we make sure that our programs serve equally boys and girls. We look at things around early childhood education. So just recently at the foundation, we launched a new program called LEAP, which was targeted towards earlier interventions on education for grades 1 through 4. And so now we have 2 pods of LEAP campuses running, serving students who need it the most in the public school sector to help with addressing learning loss. Our programs such as Focus and LEAP address things around basic literacy and numeracy as well. And so we're able to help to contribute and to supplement what's being done in the normal school day with out-of-school time activities, where we offer students 45 extra days of education between years fifth grade up to years to graduation. So we give them 8 years of extra learning, 45 days per year, to the same group of students and see them through to college. The SDG 4 also talks about scholarships and also technical and vocational education. So those are areas where the foundation has been pretty strong in ensuring that there are scholarships available for those who want to pursue post-secondary education, as well as having technical scholarships available, as well as partnerships with the local BTVI as well. And so we look at all elements of SDG 4. There's elements of SDG 8 around productivity and economic growth, where we see education as the key to improving that. And so we really do look at the SDGs to help us as we design new programs.
Okay, that's really, really great. It's good that you're working with diverse stakeholders. We need to all be able to focus on what we do well and partner with other persons where we don't have that strength, so that we can leap ahead, right, with achieving the SDGs. I think hearing what's happening in the philanthropic sector and the various stakeholders that you're interacting with, I want to ask Director Newbold, what strategies is the government employing to foster collaboration among diverse stakeholders with varying interests and priorities?
So I think we have taken a three-pronged approach in order to address that. Because first we have to look at how society is managed and how the actors are positioning themselves. So first and foremost, there is the government, who everybody just turns to. So even internally, we have to orchestrate ourselves. And like Ms. Abdallah talked about the MSDCF. Using the MSDCF as the catalyst for the creation of a governmental committee where all the agencies are coming together and pooling their resources and their ideas about where the gaps or the deficiencies are, or where there are projects or programs that can be leveraged by other ministries, so that we can enhance as much as possible. Because the fundamental thing that we are going to find is that financing is the key to a lot of the work that needs to be done in this space. And if we are not able to utilize the funding that's available to us and leverage that numerous times in various ways, we are not going to get the maximum we can get out of support that we do indeed receive. So from the government's perspective, utilizing the MSDCF committee to galvanize our work is one way of doing it. Then the second opportunity that we have is the utilization of our youth. So this year you would have seen that the government appointed and created a post of the SDG ambassadors. So this was to identify young individuals in our society who have a desire, who have a keen expression to see how they can contribute through these various 7 opportunities that the SDGs present to express themselves and help their society and contribute to the nation. So we were pleased to have to engage Mr. Kiran Halkidis and Ms. Samantha Ravalkava as our first 2 ambassadors, and we'd see throughout the course of the summer that they were engaged in a plethora of activities, and they have a whole platform of things where there's engagement with the youth, when they're bringing that perspective to this discussion, where they're identifying ways and means that this next generation, these individuals who are going to inherit this space that we're now creating, will be able to move forward. And then we have the issue of partnerships. So having the public-private sector linkages. So we, through one of the committees that we have under the SDG unit, the Economic Committee, where we have the Bahamas Development Bank. We also have various individuals from the private sector, RO Link, and SPDC, all of these individuals who are galvanized in a way to come up with project ideas that can be put towards the government for financing from a private sector perspective, and seeing how, yet again, we can try and identify financial support that would help them to implement those vehicles of projects and programs that will give other entrepreneurs and others the avenues and opportunities to venture into the space. And then going back to the overall government's position from this office in particular, identifying with our financial partners, the World Bank, IDB and others, and the GCF and others, projects and programs that we can use to stimulate our private sector, because it's easy to say the private sector, but in small island states, our private sector has a very limited means as well. There is so much we can ask from them before we actually turning it back on ourselves. So trying to find ways and means to help them be able to open up the offerings and the opportunities that they can present by leveraging, again, the financial support that we have. So from these three areas, we are trying to address the issue of ensuring that we're having everybody engaged, nobody being left behind, utilizing the opportunities that are presented through the targets and goals with these 17 opportunities that are presented with the SDGs, such that the society as a whole can benefit.
Okay. It sounds like the government has a very ambitious, ambitious set of objectives and stakeholders that they're engaging with. And so it's going to, partnership is going to be important. And so I guess, Ms. Abdullah, I wanted to inquire, as UN country representative, how are you facilitating the Bahamas' ability to deliver on its SDG commitments?
So it's really interesting. Director Newbold mentioned this being a whole of society approach, right? And again, the Joint National Steering Committee, which is that body that has the government side of it as well as UN agencies represented, is intended to provide that direct support and serve as a sounding board as well, because we're implementing projects with a variety of partners. And as she said, there may be some gaps, there may be something that we're missing. We do that as well internally. We examine this individually with our partners, whether that's among the donor community here, whether that's with young people, which is what we're starting to integrate into our programming, and just to see how we could best support. We also have to look at those marginalized groups within society, and through our reporting, through our transparency. Again, with us, it's really supporting from the UN side, bringing our technical expertise, brokering those relationships to provide access to funding. An example of that is the soon-to-be implemented gender-based violence justice project. And I think that is an example, in addition to some others, for example, the SDG Fund project that the Bahamas Development Bank has with UN Women and 3 other UN agencies called Build Back Equal. I think these kinds of projects and opportunities help the government as well with its national priorities. There's nothing that the UN is going to do that diverges from the government's priorities. And so I think for us, we do what we can to broker those kinds of relationships and continually have that feedback. And I think through the SIP and the JNSC, the Joint National Steering Committee, that's an opportunity to be very transparent about where we're falling down and hear directly from government counterparts how we could improve. And again, we're working towards this same date in 2030, and it's aspirational. Most countries, almost no country on the planet will achieve all of the SDGs. I mean, we've had to contend with COVID-19. There's the climate crisis and its effects. And so there are many other things. There are other human rights issues that are of concern that we need to address as well. But this isn't going to happen by 2030. What will happen is we'll be closer to where we want to be. And most countries, hopefully, will be closer, including the Bahamas, to that. And so the UN kind of supplements and complements those processes in country.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I definitely think we have to aspire to do better and to ensure that, honestly, there is no one being left behind. And if that's the goal, and we bring ourselves closer to that, we're helping to create stronger societies. So I guess, Ms. Kemp, for the average Bahamian, what actions can they take to ensure a sustainable future for the Bahamas?
You know, as stated earlier, Bahamians are doing a lot that actually contribute. Can they do more? Sure, everybody can do more. You know, but this is the time to really speak up. You know, become sustainable development advocates, not just for the Bahamas. You know, because we are still global citizens as well. You know, and so you know we can buy sustainable products. You know, we can actually try to see if we can lean more into conservation, lean more into, you know, having the ability to go out and advocate, not just be advocates and champions, actually do the work, because it's in the doing that we are going to achieve the SDGs. You know, we have to be able to participate in terms of like being partners and not just being bystanders to this, because being bystanders, it won't get us to where we need to be. You know, I think that Bahamians itself, you know, just get up, move, do something, you know, work together, collaborate, you know, assist in policy making, you know, be the change that we actually want to see, you know, educate each other. If through our awareness programs, you know, even if you want to collaborate with the SDG unit, if you want to collaborate with government, civil society, academia, like we all have a part to play in this, you know, in terms of the work that we do on a consistent basis. We just need to ensure that everything that we do is actually working towards the SDG goals, and we're not just doing meaningless work. We want to have a purpose. We want to be able to contribute, even though we may not make it to achieving all of the 17 goals. Where we will end up is actually the work that we put in at the end that will be able to tell what we've done in 2030.
Okay, yeah. It sounds like there's a big challenge being extended to those out there in the Bahamas. We have to do more. We have to partner and be meaningful in our work so that we can achieve a better Bahamas. Director Newbold, are there any challenges to the Bahamas' ability to achieve those targets? We're hearing that we may not all achieve them by our 2030. And in the midst of those challenges, where is the hope on how we can chart a way to 2030?
So after reaching the halfway mark, it has already been determined that nobody in this whole on the planet will reach the goals and the targets that were originally set. And it's like Ms. Abdallah said, it was for various reasons: COVID, economic, war, and other issues that countries are facing around the world. And we have this, and we're saying as sustainable development goals, transforming our Bahamas. That's the key that we're using. In order to transform the Bahamas, it must mean that we would all have to work together. We cannot believe that there is an option B or a plan B. There is no plan B. We are residents, we are owners of this nation, and it is our job. No one takes issue with the 17 areas that have been identified for as part of this program. We all agree. No one would even take issue with the targets that are set to improve healthcare, to improve education, to improve access to good, decent work. No one's gonna disagree with that. But it's all about each and every one of us, as Ms. Kemp was saying, getting out of our comfort zone and contributing. There is, like I said before, limited finances that are available. So that means that we have to make choices and we have to make informed decisions about how we are going to utilize those finances. We have to always ensure that there's a safety net, a social safety net that contributes back to leaving no one behind. There should be no facet in our society where there are large disparities between the haves and the have-nots. Everybody on these 17 little islands in this small island state called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas should be at a level that whereby there is the ability for them to live a proud and their livelihoods and the respect that is shown them. There should be that heightened level of awareness with respect to that, and everybody is entitled to it. And what we do as citizens of this country to ensure that that is possible It's the onus is all on us. Like I said, it's not government and it's not solely the private sector. We must work together. Government has a part, the private sector has a part. And if we don't put these two pieces together, we are going to fractionalize the society between the haves and the have-nots. And then as a nation, we're all going to suffer. Because if decent work isn't available, crime will continue to exist. If people don't have health care, we're all going to have issues of health and disease that are rampant in the country. If we don't educate our youth, then they're never going to understand the potential that they have and the ways that they can contribute. If we don't empower our youth, they're never going to believe that they are part of the process and they are part of the history that was made before and the future that is to come. So it's an all-embracing opportunity. Each one of us in the 17 areas need to work together to ensure that we can do our part, because we all have God-given talents by which way we can contribute to a better society.
So it sounds like we have a strong charge to Bahamians and to the partners here on board. And it's a pleasure to hear and understand what is going here in the Bahamas. And I think that we certainly have a strong legacy that's been set in the past. We have strong partnerships here in the present. And I feel very, very hopeful that we will have a strong future, a transformative future for the Bahamas and Bahamians. So that's the end of our panel. Please, please, please do not hesitate to join us for another episode of Sustainable Shores, where you will learn more about how we are achieving sustainable development in the Bahamas and innovation towards a transformed future.